And just the fact that they're now saying that transgenderism is somehow healthcare, and that we need to have our tax dollars go to supporting somebody mutilating their body. People today think this is somehow cool, and that it's really awesome to go and get a gender change. And the truth is that there are only male chromosomes and female chromosomes. There is no it chromosomes. And just the word it is degrading to another human, but if they're not a male or a female, what are they?
There it is, Beavis. When I look at that, I see fat stacks of cash.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's too high, butthead.
Try knocking it down with this big fork thing.
Okay.
Ugh! That's what you're doing, asswipe.
Yeah, sorry.
Ow!
Considering that plastic takes forever to decompose and we've basically built a new mini continent from all of our discarded plastic and the tiny version of plastic that's in our blood now.
Wow, that blew my mind!
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which, let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Just one small problem! Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman!
Sell their homes to who, Ben? Aquaman? To Aquaman? Good morning, my beauties and bees, and welcome to the Hive. Oh. And I'm a little this morning, so give me a second. I actually slept good last night, though, which is a nice change, because I've been having allergy stuff going on, so I've been waking up at like 4 in the morning with my eyes all goopy glued shut, and I have to go do the warm water and wash them and stuff, and then I'm awake for 2 more hours because I can't go back to sleep after I wake up and wash my goopy eyes. But they're also goopy in the morning when I get up, so lo and behold, I'm put together, but only so much this morning. So take from that what you will. Good morning, everybody. Let me see who I got here this morning so far. We got look at the trees. Good morning, darling. Sumami said boop back to you, love. Bugbot causing trouble. We got Deep Arcs in the house. Hello, D. Dave will not be joining us this morning. Dave, captive desk for all of you who might not know, is Dave, and he had to go in for emergency surgery. They found from what I understand, a tumor on his brain, and they had to get it removed immediately, and now he's, from what Teresa's saying, recovering well from surgery. He texted this morning, so that's a relief. My heart's with you, Dave. Hail Bigfoot. Hope you do a full, healthy recovery and are back with us in no time. Ember's here for the Buzz Festival. Yes, good morning. We got Kelly King, Detroit Atheist Queen, in the house. Hello, doll. Thank you so much for coming down. I got to actually hang out for, like a couple of days with Kelly. We did go to, the most fun I had with Kelly was went to like the Asian markets and stuff. And we had so much fun. We went to the bookstore and the grocery, the dollar store. We were all over the place, but it was a fun weekend. Let's see, Titan, good morning. I forgot I was saying good morning to people. Anyhow, welcome to the show. Yes, that was a snow leopard taken down an Aurochs. It's one of my older toggles. It was too long is why I stopped showing it, but this morning, since I was doing the Aquaman activism post, I was like, you know what, I can do the long one now because that one's super short. The one with the Ben Shapiro, that one's super short. So I kind of balance the time because I want it to be, it should run right around between the intro music and then the toggle, the commercial toggle where it goes through all the short clips, and then whatever I do for my activism, which might be, it's always making fun of some chat or something like that. It'll be, it generally want to be under 10 minutes altogether. Gives people time to roll in. We've got about a dozen people roll in this morning. But we're just getting started. The show is just getting started, and it's early on a Saturday. So what I need you all to do is whatever your breakfast is. When I was a kid, it was always on Saturday mornings, the best was cold pizza. Oh, I loved waking up and eating leftover cold pizza in the morning. Yeah, so I don't have any cold pizza this morning. I don't even eat in the morning anymore. Just coffee. Coffee and weed. That is how I start my day. And I don't eat until usually about lunchtime. So yeah, let's, before my alarm's going to go off any second now, for Cryptic Corner, because it's about that time. But before that, let's go over and check out the polls. Let's see. So, we're going to, is this the right one? I hope so. Nope, that's not the right place. This is what we wanted. Okay, here we go. So, for the polls, We had a 3-way tie, right? Snake Charming 101. Y'all really don't want to learn how to snake charm. I don't know why. You want to learn telekinesis and you want to learn pyrokinesis, but you don't want to learn snake kinesis. Oh, what would that be? Apophokinesis? Apopho? There it is. All right, let's get through these polls. But since the Entombed Animals had been on there the longest by a long shot, these two are both the newest additions. They were both added in the last couple of weeks. We're doing the Entombed Animals today for Week in Weird. That's later in the show, so stick around about that. It's not just toads, though. We actually have a pterodactyl. Yeah. And then same kind of deal goes for Cryptic Corner this week, because we had Men in Black and Phantom Monks both coming in at 22%. The Big Muddy Monster and Ontario Black Panther tied again for first place, but Big Muddy's gonna get the shot, because you're finally getting your shot, Big Muddy. It's been a long time. Yeah, you've charmed some snakes in your day, I'm sure, Sumami. I'm sure you have. I'm excited to do all of these, though, really. I'm excited that the Big Muddy Monster finally gets its break, because I think people just see it like, oh, another Bigfoot. Bree covers Bigfoot like every other show. Let's do something different. And they pick something different for the poll. But Big Muddy's a little bit different. He's kind of weird. But yeah, the snake charming I am super into. I wish I had a snake to do it with, though. That would be cool. Snake and a flute's all you need. That's all you need, and then the spiritual will to control it. All right, so that was our polls for this week, right? So now you know. Now you know. Didn't get a notification this morning. I didn't get a notification for something. Was it last night? Yesterday morning, maybe. I didn't get a notification. I don't know, for something I regularly watch, and I can't remember it now. So let me know if you got a notification. I'm going to do a poll. Let's see. Did you get a notification poll? And I'm not talking about like when you look at your menu that's on there. But I don't know if you're getting like the pop-up thing that says ding, Breeze live, like when we go live, or did you get that? So let me know. All right. So, yeah, we need to get over to Cryptic Corner, and we need to get over there like now. So, I will see you guys on the other side in Cryptic Corner, okay? I'll be back with you momentarily. Hello, my beauties and bees. Welcome to another installment of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. I'm your host, Miss Bumblebee. And today we are covering a mysterious creature from North America. And I am ready for this. I'm excited for this. We are talking about whether Ryan Coltastic is actually a werewolf. After some convincing howls on the Daily Atheist morning show yesterday, I am pretty convinced that Ryan is a werewolf. But, oh, hold on. I'm checking some. Okay, sorry. I'm on the wrong day. Yeah, today we're actually talking about the Big Muddy Monster. The Big Muddy Monster is generally considered a Sasquatch-like creature, right? It's generally considered like a Bigfoot type variant, but some reports give it pointy ears like a dog man. The main thing is that it's big and it's muddy. But I'm not going to explore this chapter alone. I'm following the Groovy Red Planet, which is a very, very tiny channel. Only 22 subscribers. Right? Only 22 subscribers. And they haven't made anything in a year. And only have the 3 videos. This is by far their best video, their best viewed video, 145. So that's the one we're gonna watch. And he does a really good job of putting together all the news reports and stuff. I get why putting that much work into it and only getting a smattering of interest is discouraging. So hopefully, yeah, I'm gonna subscribe. Now he's got 23 subscribers. What? All right, so let's give the dude the floor. Let me see.
Are abominable creatures watching your every move? Well, depends on your definition, but probably not. However, for many in the town of Murfreesboro, Illinois, it certainly feels that way. What's happening, y'all? Welcome to the Groovy Red Planet, bringing you tasty waves from outer space. Today's strange mystery of the universe
Tasty waves from outer space, yo.
We're going to be exploring is the case of the Big Muddy Monster in Murfreesboro, Illinois. Now, I consider myself a mysteries, monsters, and cryptids enthusiast that has gone pretty deep on the iceberg, but I'd never heard of the Big Muddy Monster.
Please let me know how the audio is, my friends and fam out there. These earbuds are kind of sucking lately. I think I need to get a different pair. I got another pair. I got my walking earbuds, but they're not as comfortable as these ones. They're okay to wear for, walking around the block, and they're easier to take out than these because they're not rubbery when someone speaks to me out in the public. But they're not good for this, and I need some new ones because these ones are, I don't know if one of the speakers is just getting worn out, but I can hardly hear when things are all the way up. I was at the Werewolf Guild and I didn't see Ryan there. Oh, well, is Secular Dave at the are you a member of the Werewolf Society? I actually got better notifications than I normally do. It actually popped up on my desktop. Hell yeah, Sumami. You got your notification, Native Atheist, and good morning to Dave too. Again, if you all missed it, Captive Desk had to go, so they're not going to be here this morning in the side chat, dropping Bigfoot stuff, but they had to get surgery this morning, or not this morning. They had to get surgery last night or yesterday. They're in recovery this morning. I won't divulge too much about what's going on. That's their story to tell, but they, yeah. I wish them the best on recovery. Werewolves are known for their fabulous hair. That's one of the things too. Is Ryan's yesterday she had the big wild woman hair and she's got the bicolored hair, which is always freaking sexy, but definitely werewolf vibes. Got that ginger snaps kind of vibe. So I'm thinking, yeah, Ryan's probably a werewolf. She probably transforms under the light of the full moon. But is she the Big Muddy Monster? I doubt it. She wouldn't even have been born back then.
monster before researching this video. However, if you go to the town website of Murfreesboro, they have a page dedicated to the monster, claiming it as one of the most famous cryptids with links to actual case files regarding it, which is not only super helpful for research, just cool as hell. Big Muddy is a Sasquatch-like ape creature that lives along the banks of the Big Muddy River. He's described as being 7 to 8 feet tall with white or light-colored fur, covered in mud, red eyes, and giving off a foul, permeating
Morning, Miss Sandy. Good to see you, babe.
odor. So right off the bat, solely because this is a Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch type creature, and there's so many of these reported, that I'm immediately like hyper skeptical of anything like this, because there are so many variants of Bigfoot type legends in America alone, without even incorporating the rest of the world, that the chances that there's so many variants and these things haven't been discovered yet is just so highly unlikely that I pretty much write off.
This is this word variant throughout this. Like, I guess that since this was about a year ago, maybe he just finished watching Loki or something. But is Bigfoot supposed to be in this lore? Is Bigfoot supposed to be like a variant of the same creature across different times, teleporting into our timeline? Because that's kind of sick. Yeah.
Off any Bigfoot variant right from the start. I like my original Bigfoot, I like my Yetis, and I'll even throw like a skunk ape in there of cryptids that I like, and I'm like, curious, I want to know a little bit about those. But like typically anything else, I'm just like, all right, there's no way that there's this many Bigfoots. However, what caught my attention with this,
there has to be a breeding population for Bigfoots to exist at all, so there has to be at least some, right? It's an albino Bigfoot shunned by the rest of the living in relative squalor. Yeah, he cakes himself with mud to hide his albinism, but we all know. Ginger Snaps is such a good series. I love Ginger Snaps. I love the subtext of it too, because it's more than just a werewolf movie. And the sisters in Ginger Snaps, man, they remind me of myself when I was a teenager wanting to do like horror FX and stuff.
one is honestly the police reports around it. I understand that when police are called to a scene, they have to take down witness testimony and stuff. They have to make a report. It's not special that they had to make a report, but the narrative that the reports all we that apparently hadn't interacted with each other, and they happened so close back to back itself is worth hearing out, just because it's an interesting narrative, even if it's pure fiction. But yes, normally I would write off any sort of Bigfoot variant that isn't the original Bigfoot.
Yes, Ginger Snaps is a Canadian horror series. Who's in Ginger Snaps? Hold on. With two wonderful Canadian actresses that still work in both like cult movies and in like mainstream television and stuff. There's Catherine Isabel. She's Ginger, and then Emily Perkins is Bridget, her sister.
Eddie, or something like Skunk Ape, but because this one has such a detailed and interesting narrative that runs through police reports about it, I thought it was worth covering, especially as my first episode. This seems like it would be a fun start to one that I hadn't heard of before. So the first report of Big Muddy that seems to have started this legend comes on June 25th.
Ooh, I got to show you all something about Big Muddy too, and about Murfreesboro as well. We're going to step away for just a second, and we're going to go and look at where Murfreesboro is. So, and it's interesting because, okay, this is the Mississippi, right? There's St. Louis. Up here's where Bree's from, but right here is this town, Louisiana, Missouri. Now this was our local, because like I said, I'm from right up there. I'm originally from just right up here, but I'm not there anymore, so I'm not really worried about people finding me. But this town had its own Bigfoot sighting right here in the middle of town too. Marzoff Hill Park, that there was a Bigfoot creature living in this woodlands here up on the hill, right? Crazy that it's so close. Well, not super close. There's a metropolis between them there and here, but with the right route around the city of St. Louis, could be the same creature, right? I mean, I don't know if I believe any of it, but I like how it follows these, because here's the Big Muddy River, right? And the Big Muddy River is kind of squirrely if you look at it, as something called the Big Muddy River should be. It goes all squirrely and whirly down here. Look at that. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Swirl, swirl. It's a crazy... Look at that. Look how nutty it gets right there. It's Turkey Bayou. But all of this is down here is the Shawnee National Forest, and it comes right up into the town, right up into here. So it's pretty excuse me, it's pretty tightly linked to this forest area, and it is huge. It is a huge wooded region. I mean, even when it ends, you get the Trail of Tears State Forest on down, because this is all forest here too. So, a big tract of land for a big muddy monster to roam in. I like this. Maybe he's trying to spell his name in the rivers. I thought the Mississippi River was also mythical. No, I grew up on the Mississippi. I thought the whole world smelled like that till I moved away. Because it does smell like river bottoms. Within about 2 miles to the river. And all the towns I've lived in my life were like right by the river. Anyway.
1973, and reads as follows. At approximately 23:55 hours, so I believe that's 11:55 p.m., June 25th, 1973, complainant came to MPD and reported sighting some type of creature in the wooded area north of the Big Muddy River next to the boat ramp parking area. Officers Nash and Lindsay were dispatched to the area. Upon arrival, officers spotlighted the entire area and were unable to locate anything unusual. Complainant met officers at the scene, described what occurred as follows. Complainant was parked on the south side of the parking area next to the woods. Complainant heard a loud screaming sound in the wooded area and observed a large creature approximately 7 feet tall. The creature appeared to have light-colored hair matted with mud. The creature appeared to be walking on 2 legs and was proceeding toward his car. The creature continued the screaming, changing tones, and proceeding toward the car. Complainant then left the area and came to MPD. Judy Johnson, who was also inside the car, stated that she had heard the screaming but was unable to see the creature due to darkness. Complainant and Johnson also stated that no human would be able to scream or make a noise loud as what they heard. Officers located impressions in the mud approximately 3 to 4 inches.
People will say things like that, though. They don't know. They don't know. Maybe just Bigfoot. It could... Like the word sheep, it's both singular and plural. What's Titan talking about? Bigfoot or big feet? Bigfoots or big feet? That's a good question. Now that I got a reading on the notification stuff, most people seem to have gotten one. I might do a poll on big feet or Bigfoots. Let's start the poll, yeah. Bigfoot. Big feet. All right, any other options besides big feet or Bigfoot? Let's see. Let me know.
Is deep, approximately 10 to 12 inches long and approximately 3 inches wide. It is unknown what made the impressions. At approximately 0200 hours, officers Nash and Lindsay, Deputy Scott, and complainant returned to the area with boots to inspect the area further where the creature was seen. Officers discovered prints in the mud similar to the prints described above, except they were deeper in the mud and not as long as the others appeared. Officer Lindsay left the area to obtain a camera to photograph the prints. The prints in the mud were very erratic, and that no two were the same distance apart, and some were 5 to 6 feet apart. Also, prints were found very close together. While Officer Lindsay was away from the area...
What a weird way to phrase that. I guess this is like the... What is this? The 70s?
Officers Nash and Scott and complainant Needham followed the prints in the mud toward the river. While officers and complainant were bent over some of the tracks inspecting them, a loud shrill scream came from the wooded area to the southeast near the river and seemed to be approximately 100 yards away. Needham immediately stated...
My biggest thing about this being in Illinois in the 70s in southern Illinois is that you don't run around in the woods with a monster costume on screaming unless you want to get shot, unless you're like suicidal.
That was the creature. Officers and Needham retreated out of the wooded area back to the squad car and advised Officer Lindsay of what had occurred.
You gotta say that with like a Gollum voice, Andrew. It's big feetses. The big feetses in the water. To save on bus fare, that's hardcore. They would go to the river bank strip, put their clothes in waterproof bags, I guess, and swim across the river with them, get out, drip dry, and get dressed again. I'm old enough that I knew a guy generations older who lived on the west banks of New Orleans. Get to the French Quarters by swim. Yeah, when my dad he grew up in Quincy, and it's on the Mississippi, but that used to be a thing that like a rite of passage that you would do is you'd swim out to this island. And I guess some people got drowned trying to do it because the currents changed when they rerouted for the barge traffic, and some people drowned, so that like they put a stop to it. But it used to be like a teenage rites of passage. Now my grandpa, he remembers when the Mississippi was like super, super wide, right? And that they used to, or he remembered, he's passed away now, but when the Mississippi was super wide, and in the winter that it would freeze over solid, right? It'd freeze over complete. It doesn't do that anymore. It's too deep and moves too fast to freeze over solid. But it used to freeze over solid, and people would drive across it in their cars.
And requested Sergeant Tincher to come to the scene to photograph the tracks. Officers continued to search the area with spotlights on the squad cars, but were unable to locate any movement. Upon arrival, Sergeant Tincher photographed several of the prints in the mud, and all personnel left the area. What lends a bit of credibility to this story for me is that at this place and time, it would have been scandalous.
Just a dead guy wearing a gorilla suit. Yeah, you expect that to happen more, though. Or these guys to get shot.
For these two people to have been alone in a car together at like the locals' Lover's Lane. So it would be very odd of them to falsify a police report about some monster in the woods if they weren't genuinely terrified of something. And regardless of the scandalousness of it, it would still be very weird for a random couple to just make this up for no reason. Like people do.
So the fun thing about this couple is, if I remember the story right, she is a married woman, and she's like 30 or something, and he was a teenager, not a kid, but a teenager, and he had just gotten married, and they were having an affair.
Do weird things for Who knows why, but I'm inclined to believe that they at least saw something that freaked them out. And the police seem to think the same thing because they went out and checked it after the fact. What's also really funny is when I was researching this and like watching documentaries on it and stuff, I was confused because I'd heard, I think in the documentary that I'll link below, is that these were two people who were married but not to each other, so they were having an affair, and that's what the locals thought lent credibility to it. But seeing that Randy Needham is 19 and Judy Johnson is 28.
What do you call a baby Bigfoot? Is it a squatchling? What do you call a group of Bigfoots? Is it a tribe? Is it a herd? Is it a troop? Is it a clan? A clan of Bigfoots? Oh, there's Henry. I'm getting worked out.
For 1973, I think that alone is probably like pretty scandalous, like even without having to add the marriage aspect into it. So regardless, a 19-year-old, 28-year-old are having a little too much fun down by Big Muddy. And so they went to the police over something that genuinely terrified them. So I honestly don't think that there's any reason for them to have fabricated this.
Well, it's more about, I don't want to, okay, 19 and 28, oh my gosh, that's, hold on, I gotta go, I'll be right back. Henry, it's okay, hold on. Oh my gosh. So sorry about that. There's a repairman here for, we had some bricks that were coming loose in our kitchen and gonna fall and bop somebody on the head. So we had to call the people to come in and fix that. And they're gonna start working on it right now. So I had to put the dog away.
Other than they're just weird. They're just into like weird. Clearly they're into weird stuff, but I mean,
I'll trim
like
that out. Sorry if that was awkward. Okay, making sure I was reconnected on my mic. Because sometimes when it reconnects, it connects my headphones and makes them the standard mic. It's really annoying. Hello, Vandalia. Have you tried being a redhead? Also, DM me on Discord or Facebook so we can schedule your appearance on Talking Time with Caffeine. Yeah, I would love to do another show with you, Vandalia. Let's set something up. Have I tried being a redhead? Not like a ginger redhead. I have a like blood red, like a blood rain wig that I wear. It's I wore it for Halloween last year when I went as Blood Rain. My stepfather was like 22 when he married my 44-year-old mother. 18 with 38 is about the same. Yeah. I mean, it depends on how it can be predatory because at 18, 19, even a 20-year-old may not be developmentally ready for that sort of understanding, especially when it comes to like having an affair with a married woman.
Even weirder than that, of like they get their kicks from sending the police after a Scooby-Doo monster. But yeah, also the loud scream that they heard in the woods is very fascinating as well, because so if this is like a prank, like maybe it's someone in a costume, that means that at 11:55 p.m. they scare this couple. The couple is so terrified that they drive off and head straight to the police station. These people or person, whoever's doing the alleged prank, stays in the area until 2 a.m., watches the original man show up with the cops this time, and as the police are searching with searchlights, and there's at least 3 of them on the scene, there might even be 4, at least they called in a 4th, but so there's at least 3 police on the scene spotlighting the area, and this dude person just decides to do the screech again, only 100 yards away from them. It's possible, but given that this is Illinois in the 70s in the middle of the woods, that's like serious gun country, that would be extremely odd and extremely stupid of someone to be in the woods playing dress up as an animal. But then again,
I usually draw when I'm dating, like I don't the youngest person I've ever dated as an adult since my separation or whatever was 26, and even then it was like, yeah, we didn't really vibe. We just I mean, chemistry, like sexual chemistry was, yeah, but we didn't like, what do you do beyond that?
A lot of gun owners, or I don't want to say most or not most, but at least when I'm going hunting, whenever I've gone out hunting, whatever, we're very particular about our shots, so we don't just go shooting random animals screaming in the woods. Like, you want to know exactly what you're shooting is correct. That's like day one. That is literally the first lesson in guns, is like, don't point your gun at something that you're not willing to destroy. So
unless the sound of this animal was coming from equipment, right? If the sound was coming from some, like a sound system, someone sticking out their window.
I mean, it's not impossible that a local would feel comfortable to go out and play this prank and not worry about getting shot. I mean, if you know your community is like pretty safe with guns, then it is what it is. But I don't know, the motivation for a prank doesn't seem to be there, but there's always that possibility. So I just want to throw these theories out there so we can.
It does seem like a bad idea to pull that kind of prank in this area, but again, if it's equipment playing the sound, I don't think that it'd be as much of a risk, right? Because you wouldn't actually be shooting, a person wouldn't actually be at risk of getting shot if someone was good enough to aim. Bugbot just targeted Aunt Jer for no reason.
Think about it, digest it together. We're working through this. We're trying to understand the story and the motive and get to some kind of conclusion here. So then the reports carry on into the next night when a very similar call was made by Mrs. Harry Ray. At approximately 22:12 hours, June 26, 1973, so I believe that is 10:12 p.m. Look at me doing math. MPD received a phone call from Mrs. Harry Ray stating that her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend had just seen a large creature in the field behind their residence. Officers Nash and Manwaring were dispatched to the scene. Is Officer Nash the same person from the night before? I think it is.
Officer Nash is the nemesis of the big muddy monster. It's lore now. Oh no, there is no spray. There's just SWAT now. I did never add, after it crashed, I did never add the sting back. There, but you can swat him away.
Yeah, that's Officer Nash, patrolman, MPD. J. Nash. Look at that. Anyways, officers Nash and Manwaring were dispatched to the scene. Upon arrival, officers were met by Cheryl A. Ray and Randy E. Creeth, which gave the following account of what had occurred. Randy and Cheryl were sitting on the patio talking when they observed something moving around a patch of small trees in the field behind 37 Westwood Lane. Both Randy and Cheryl watched and observed a large creature walk out of the patch of trees near the edge of the yard and then turn around and walk back into the field. The creature was described as being 7 to 8 feet tall, weighing 300 to 350 pounds, pale dirty white or cream colored, and standing on 2 feet. Creeth stated that he walked toward it and got approximately 30 to 40 feet from it. Creeth also stated that it had a musky odor to it. Officers inspected the area where the creature was seen and found weeds broken down and somewhat of a path.
I thought they were going to say they found weed. That sounds right. Probably something stronger than weed, though. No, I swat bug bot. Hopefully it doesn't swat me. Yeah, the ghillie suit. That sounds about right.
Where something had walked through. Jerry Nellis was notified to bring his dog to the area to see if the dog would track the creature. Upon arrival of Nellis and his dog, a German Shepherd trained to attack, search buildings, and track, the dog was led to the area where the creature was last seen. The dog began tracking down the hill where the creature was reported to have gone. As the dog started down the hill, it kept stopping and sniffing at a slime substance on the weeds. The slime appeared periodically as the dog tracked the creature. Nellis put some of the
I think that they smeared their ape suit with mud.
Slime between his fingers, rubbed it, and it left a black coloring on his fingers. Each time the dog found amounts of it, the dog would hesitate. The creature was tracked down the hill to a pond, around the pond to a wooded area south of the pond, where the dog attempted to pull Nellis down a steep embankment. The area where the dog tracked the creature was too thick and bushy to walk through, so the dog was pulled off the trail and returned to the car. Officers then searched the entire area.
Dude, that's pretty sad. You're hired to do some tracking. You're like, oh, well, I wasn't prepared to go off the trail. Come on now. You can't expect me to just go off the trail. I don't get paid enough for that. I'm not a what are you even doing, guy?
Flashlights. Officer Nash, Nellis, and the dog then proceeded to the area directly south of where the dog was pulled off of the tracks. The area was at the end of the first row to the west, past Westwood Hills turnoff. The area is approximately half a mile south of the area of the pond behind 37 Westwood Lane. Nellis and the dog again began to search the area to see if the dog could again pick up the scent. Nellis and the dog approached an abandoned barn, and Nellis called to Officer Nash to come to the area as the dog would not enter the barn. Nellis pushed the dog inside and the dog immediately ran out. Nash and Nellis searched the barn and found nothing inside. Nellis stated that the dog was trained to search buildings and had never backed down from anything. Nellis could offer no explanation as to why the dog became scared and would not go inside the barn. Officers then continued to search the area and were unable to locate the creature. Dave Barrell, neighbors of Ray's, stated that approximately 10 minutes prior to Creeth and Ray sighting the creature, his child came into the house and stated there was a large ghost in their backyard. Barrell stated he thought nothing of it until Creeth and Cheryl Ray sighted the creature.
Ghost.
That's my favorite report because
a large ghost in the backyard. Hello, Dr. Osiris. Hello, Chrissy. Did we get like a raid or something? I got new people popping in. Why? Because Weed Bro. Hello. Hello. Jester, good morning. Very Skunk Ape vibes. Westwood Lane sounds like somewhere a witch would live. Let's see if we can find Westwood Lane on the map. In Murfreesboro. Looking for Westwood Lane. Probably be easier to search it. Because I think it would be down here though, right? One would expect it to be near the water. Near the water. See how I add that extra R? That's how you know I grew up in Missouri. You wash things in Missouri. You wash your clothes. Westwood. There we go. Oh, it's way up there. I was in the wrong part of town. It's a little suburb area. Look at that. Little cul-de-sac. But it is forested back here. And there's Lake Forest Drive. So there's like a little wooded area here, that's for sure.
It reads a little bit like a Scooby-Doo episode. I like that detail about how
wrong.
When the dog is tracking down the creature, there's just like that slime substance covering everything, and like
it's a very exceptional dog, Equus. Very exceptional.
It's like the classic horror movie trope where like he scoops it up, he's like rubbing, looking at his fingers. Like, I think, is that in Prometheus where something like that happens and it like infects the dude and like you got like the little thing crawling around in his eye? That's kind of like the creepy vibes that I get from this one. So I enjoy this one because this is where it starts to read like a creepypasta, like 40, 50 years before that was even a thing.
Always stick your fingers into mysterious substances you find. Very important.
Ooh, I enjoyed that. That's also super weird about the dog wouldn't enter the barn. They literally had to shove it inside and the dog just took off running, which good on that dog. That is the right move. But still, that is extremely odd for a dog to not pursue whoever they're looking after. Which
I like in Prometheus how the biologist guy was like, hey, here's a snake-like analog raising its head up and spreading a hood. Let me touch it. Like, what animals do that on Earth?
Can we just give props to the Murfreesboro Police Department? Like, they've gotten 2 reports of a Sasquatch-like creature, and they just immediately bring the dogs out to like track this thing down. They're crawling around in the swamps and the woods looking for it. No crime has actually been committed. Just a couple of people saw something a little weird, and these guys were on it. They were tracking him down the trail into the little ponds, going around the ponds, finding the weird black substance that they're pulling off things, and they didn't hesitate for a second. They just kept going after it, tracking it down to that barn, but in the end they couldn't find anything. And that also reads like a little bit like an X-Files episode of how you think they're just about to get the creature. They have it cornered in like in this little dingy barn middle of the night,
and it disappears.
And then they go in and there's nothing there. Like it actually is a ghost, like Dave Barrel saw, or his kid saw.
It's the ghost of Bigfoot. That's why it's white. That Prometheus is your favorite alien film?
It's the Midnight Spookies. What also I love about this report is that one of the things that's like frustrating about old school like missing persons reports is It's so frustrating when the cops are just like, they're probably just playing hooky and like that's why this person vanished, yada yada, and they don't take it seriously, which I'm sure many of you have heard. If you're on a channel like this, you're listening to unexplained mysteries and stuff, people going missing, the cops just not treating it like it actually matters. But 2 people call in a Bigfoot and the Murfreesboro PD are just on it. They're going to
If you
find
look at how tiny the town is now, and it's probably even tinier back then, they're probably just thrilled to have something to do.
this thing at all costs, and they just bring out the cavalry for it. I love that. So props to the 1973 Murfreesboro, Illinois Police Department. I don't know how they are now, but back then they were an elite unit. Here's one thing I was waiting till after I read that second report to show, because I don't know which night these come from, but look at these photos here. So these are photos in the actual police report that are on the website that I'm guessing they're supposed to be the photos of the alleged footprints, but it doesn't look like anything to me. I don't understand what they were taking a picture of. This literally looks like anything could have scraped through the mud right here and left a track like this, but like maybe
dragging a stick through the mud.
I'm missing something. On the second photo here, it does look like there's like some kind of slight indentation on the right and maybe at the top of the picture here. But for the most part, to me, it just looks like a stick in the mud could have, like scraping the mud could have left that. So I don't know if these are actually supposed to be pictures of the footprints, but it did mention them in the reports. And then
Murfreesboro does sound like the town in a 70s slasher movie.
These are the only pictures that they have linked in the PDF on their website. So I don't know what it's supposed to be. But I don't think there's a whole lot of substance to these images. If I'm wrong about that, please point it out to me in the comments, because I would genuinely like to see a footprint if I could. I just don't. Not really anything I can do about that is what I see, or what I don't see.
I didn't see any footprint either, brah. It's good.
At approximately 18:05 hours, July 7th, 1973, officers Nash and Glodo were stopped at Riverside Park by complainant Miller, owner of Miller Carnival, to report his workers seeing a large creature near the carnival area the previous morning. Miller stated that he did not report it at the time, as the report might have scared off persons which would visit the carnival. Miller directed...
Or at their circus goers, they're probably going to be attracted to monster reports. I'm losing my gloss. I gotta re-gloss myself. It's not for you guys. There's a man here.
The officers to 4 workers which observed the creature. The workers stated that approximately 0200 hours, so 2 a.m., July 7th, 1973, they heard the ponies causing a disturbance and attempting to pull loose from the trees which they were tied to. The ponies were tied to trees in an
definitely
area...
missing the scale, or banana for scale, a rock hammer. Do they have bears down there? Yes, they do. Black bear. They would probably be transient black bears, but yeah, they'd have bears down there. Yeah, we talked about Captive Desk earlier in the show. We got an update that he is in recovery now. He is recovering, so.
Just east of the West Shelter and behind the carnival trucks. The workers proceeded around the truck to check the ponies and observed a large creature described as 7 to 8 foot tall, light brown hair over its entire body, standing erect on 2 legs and weighing 300 to 400 pounds. The creature was reported standing very near the ponies and seemed to be curious of them and made no advance. The workers
Will that
then
be transient from the Ozarks? Would be the transient where they would have been transient from.
The carnival owner's trailer and reported it to him. Upon checking the area with the owner, the creature was gone. At approximately 0300 hours, 3 a.m., so an hour later, July 7th, 1973, Charles Kimball, carnival worker, stated the creature reappeared near the ponies again and seemed interested in the ponies. Kimball then ran to the owner's trailer, and upon checking with the owner, the creature was gone. No footprints could be located in the area. The reports then go quiet for about
Be trolling their circus boss.
about 3 years until June of 1976, when 2 more reports would come in of multiple people sighting the creature on different occasions. At approximately 21:59 hours, so I think that's 9:59 p.m., June 19th, 1976. It'd be hilarious. I'm just wrong about all of these the entire time. But Mrs. Ray Kells called Murfreesboro
shows on the
Police Department
report.
to speak with police officers reference a creature her son and 2 friends had just seen. Officers Nash and Schultz were dispatched to the area. Upon arrival, officers were met by complainant Kells, her son Ricky Kells, David Taylor, and Russell Ward. Also, the parents of Taylor and Ward were present. Officers were advised by the parents that their children had seen a large creature behind number 25 Westwood Lane, standing next to the woods. The parents
Are we
stated
back
that they
at
were
Westwood
hesitant in
Lanes
calling, but their
again?
children's actions convinced them that they had actually seen something. Officers were led to the area where the sighting had taken place. Officers searched in the wooded area just south of where the sighting was made. Officers were unable to find any tracks, but did locate an area approximately 100 yards into the woods where several large rocks had recently been turned over. Officers then interviewed each of the subjects which had seen the creature. Ricky Kells, age 10, stated that he, David Taylor, and Russell Ward were playing wiffle ball when they went to look for a foul ball that was hit between 2 houses. As he was walking down the hill, he observed a large creature approximately 7 to 8 feet tall standing next to the woods. Ricky hollered at David and Russell, and they also observed it. We then ran home to tell our parents. Ricky described it as being approximately 7 to 8 feet tall, had what appeared as large
old are
ears,
these
and appeared to
kids?
be gray in color.
How old are these kids? Age 10. Okay, so a 10-year-old was estimating the size of the creature. That's important to keep in mind. I'd be interested to know what the kid was comparing the height to come to the 7 or 8 feet tall.
The creature was described to be covered with hair and did not move while being observed. Ricky said that as they were running away, it apparently entered the woods and he could hear a loud thumping as it walked away. David Taylor, age 11, stated as he, Ricky, and Russell were looking for a wiffle ball, Ricky screamed and pointed towards the woods. When he looked over, he observed a large creature standing next to the woods. David said they then ran home to tell their parents. David described it as being approximately 7 feet tall, gray in color, and also said it appeared to have large ears or lumps on its head. He said it made a loud thumping noise on the ground as it left.
Doesn't tell us
David
David's
said while he was
age.
observing it, it didn't move. He heard the noise as he was leaving the area.
Russell
Ward, age 13, stated that while he, Ricky, and David were looking for a wiffle ball, Ricky screamed and then he turned, and David saw a large creature standing next to the woods. He said that he observed it turn sideways and raise its left arm just before he ran. He said he also heard a thumping sound as it walked away. Russell described it as being tall. Now this is interesting because I believe, let's see, this is Westwood Lane. Let's go back to our earlier report. I believe when they're tracking it, the creature through the pond, it's also in the Westwood area as well. Westwood Hills, approximately half a mile south of the area of the pond, 37 Westwood Lane. And these people live at
which we just looked at least the modern
34
version
Westwood
of it.
Lane, 23 Westwood Lane, and number 4 Buena Vista Drive. So this
Buena
creature is
Vista.
located around Westwood Lane. Let's see if we can find a map of it.
I did.
There's a
You should be able
lot.
to as
Okay,
well.
I thought
This is the
initially when I was
cul-de-sac.
going to look this up, it was going to be like just a suburb, and it's like, okay, so obviously it's someone playing a prank, but there's a pretty wide expanse of wilderness around
cul-de-sac.
here. And the farther you zoom out, this thing, wow. Okay, so this sits right on the edge of the Shawnee National Forest. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, when I first started researching this, I probably should have looked up a map before recording the video, but it's actually kind of fun to discover this with you guys.
Well, we already looked at it.
I just assumed that this was a pretty small town local community, that there wasn't going to be like a whole lot of ways of a creature like this to exist and move around a lot in.
Yeah, look at
but
that.
looking at the map here, it's actually right on the edge of the Shawnee National Forest, and there's just an endless amount of areas that this thing could go. Ooh, now
No, I agree with that. Yeah, that it's really is a vast forest. We can go back and look again, because our cul-de-sac is right here, right? And we can get a little more detailed. I wonder if this is the pond they were talking about, or this is the pond. I'm thinking this is probably, they probably call this pond a lake. Yeah, they do. Borgs Miller Lake. But to me, that's a pond. It does have fingers though, which is not something I usually associate with ponds, but and this is just the modern interpretation. Like this is very, very close to the river. The Big Muddy River is right here. Like here's Riverside Park and stuff too. So yeah, this little area of woodland. And yeah, if you go over this way, it's, yeah, you just have a straight shot to that area from the forest. But I digress. The best option is probably going to be like someone in a ghillie suit playing
like
pranks.
really interested in this one. Okay, I'm adding this guy to the tier of like skunk ape. I won't add him to full on Bigfoot Yeti level, but I think Big Muddy deserves a spot next to the skunk ape. Where this also gets interesting is another report would be made approximately a little over a week later. What was that, on the 19th? So about 8 days later,
Almost
on
identical.
the 27th, at approximately 2100 hours on June 27th, 1976, MPD received a report from Merle Mifflin via public service that the Big Muddy Monster had been seen near his residence. Officers Iovaldi and Nash were dispatched to the complainant's residence on Mifflin Road off of Route 149 West. Officer Nash is still on the case 3 years later. I love it. I love Officer Nash's commitment.
Nash is the enemy of the Big Muddy Monster. They're like rivals. He's the hard-edged cop that is trying to get to the bottom of this monster, right?
3 years later, and he's still in on the case. You go, Officer Nash. Upon arrival, officers spoke with the complainant, who stated that his children and a visitor had seen what is believed to be the Big Muddy Monster. The complainant stated that his two children, Michael E. Mifflin and Melinda J. Mifflin, were playing just north of their residence with a friend from Belleville, Illinois, Karen D. Gruber, when they saw a large animal walking through a small wooded area where they were playing. The complainant also stated that his dog was with the children when he started barking, but would not enter the wooded area. The complainant stated that this was a strange way for his dog to act. Officers accompanied by the complainant
It's weird when they say this, because I've seen
area.
Chihuahuas go after like grizzly bears. What are they trying? What claim are they trying to make about the Big Muddy Monster here? What are they saying that its influence is causing on the dogs? Because when it comes to protecting their pack, dogs are ready to die. They're ready to go after. They'll go and charge a grizzly bear. They'll charge a mountain lion, right? They'll charge a tiger. Dogs are courageous. We don't deserve dogs, but it's always weird to me when you hear these monster and ghost stories that the dog wouldn't track or wouldn't go into this place. It's like, what did the dog think was going to happen if it went in? Because they're already prepared to die. Your dog will die for you. That's true. If your dog loves you, if you don't like abuse it and stuff, And I'm not saying that in a gross or demeaning way about dogs at all. They are that loyal to their family. Just naturally.
Is surrounding the residence on foot, but could find no trace of any type of large animal. Officer Ivaldi then interviewed each of the 3 witnesses and obtained the following description of the supposed monster. Michael E. Mifflin described the supposed monster as being 6 feet tall and weighing between 5 to 6 tons, and to have a black furry coat. This witness stated that he observed the monster along a creek bank southwest of his house around 9 a.m. on Saturday, June 26, 1970.
That's the more like the description I expect from a little kid. It's about 6 feet tall and weighed 5 or 6 tons. 1 ton per foot.
6. Karen D. Gruber, who lives in Belleville, Illinois, stated that she and the other 2 witnesses were playing on a swing approximately 75 feet northwest of the residence when she heard something walking in the wooded area. As the dog began barking, she observed an object that was real, tall, fat, and big, walking around in the woods. The object was walking south. This occurred around 8:45 p.m. Melinda J. Mifflin was also playing near the swing, and she saw just an object walking through the woods. Now, what's interesting to me is how the initial reports from 1973 are primarily made by couples who were alone together at night, who had seen this creature.
It's a lover's lane monster, like sheep squatch.
Whereas the ones in 1976, it's groups of children that have spotted the creature. And I don't know if that's like intentional or not, but that raises some questions that specific groups were seeing this creature at specific times. And there's probably a lot more stories that aren't recorded in police reports, like local legends and stuff like that, that are not being incorporated here. But working with the evidence that we have, it's very strange that the creature seems to be showing itself to specific groups of people. It is also interesting that
it's almost like somebody in a ghillie suit is being very specific about who they target with their Bigfoot prank.
Even with the 3-year time gap, the creature's still seen in relatively the same area, that Westwood
But it
Lane.
looks completely different. It went from being cream or light brown colored and 8 feet tall, about 400 pounds, to being dark colored, 6 foot tall, and the only weight they gave was 5 to 6 tons.
Area. So the question remains, is there a big muddy monster terrorizing the town of Murfreesboro, Illinois, or is this all just a big hoax gone out of control? Well, in the documentary Creature from Big Muddy, which I will link in the description below, the host interviewed a man named Bruce Klein.
And I did watch this.
A member of the Little Egypt Ghost Society, a group in southern Illinois that investigates the paranormal. Klein asserts
It's called Little Egypt because Cairo's right there at the very bottom tip of Illinois, on a little island between the Ohio River and the Mississippi. Yeah. Little sliver of land. And there sits Cairo.
that not only is this all a bunch of nonsense, but he claims to actually know who started it all. He doesn't give any real names, but he calls this acquaintance Willie. Willie apparently was an amateur filmmaker who was really into special effects and costume making. Willie and his associates had the idea in 1973 to create a costume of a big hairy river monster that was approximately 7 feet tall and caked in mud from the river. They even got their hands on a can of some kind of horrible smell to give the creature that distinct feature. They also made recordings
Why
of
would you need it to stink for your film, though? Are you going to put it on smell-o-vision?
horrible creature screams and sounds to play later on. They would then wait down by the river close to the boat ramp, which was a known spot for people to hang out at night, and wait to scare them to death. They would blast the sounds and spray the spray to make the most realistic encounter possible.
Wow.
They horrified the first couple so bad they went right
It's Wild Willie.
to the police station, which is the first encounter that we read. Many people, however, claim there's no way this thing is the hoax. The stories I read are just what's been covered in the police reports from the initial instances that made this a known mystery. However, there are many more alleged encounters, and these believers are adamant that you would have to be a total moron to be pulling a prank like that in gun country. Personally, I started thinking there was a
I do agree with the fact that it's going to get you shot, but I think that the situation, if you notice that they're targeting couples at a lover's lane, right? They're targeting kids at a playground. They're not targeting people that they think would have guns.
pretty cut and dry case of a hoax at first, but as I've read more into it, I've moved a little more onto the fence. I think the witness encounters reported to police can be accepted as people who genuinely believe they encountered something and had very little to gain from making a story up. What also had me skeptical and still
Titan says, gun country? You mean the USA?
does, of course, is the fact that it's a Bigfoot variant. Like I said earlier, the amount of Bigfoot stories there are across the world that all describe basically the exact same creature makes them seem highly prevalent, and yet there's like not one solidly conclusive piece that they exist. So anything with a Bigfoot variant, I'm immediately highly skeptical of. So I probably land on, I think these people most likely saw something that genuinely rattled their cages, but what it was, not too sure about. And on that,
I like the like what Sumami said like almost an hour ago now. A person in a ghillie suit.
that note, I think it would also be odd of Bruce Klein to be making up the story of his friend letting him in on the hoax. Granted, he has a little bit to gain from this just because he is a member of a group that investigates the paranormal, but he could gain clout from whichever side of the fence he was on this. If Bruce believed it, his group could gain notoriety as the top investigators of the case, being so local, but on the flip side, being against Big Muddy lets him more credibility as an actual paranormal investigator that doesn't just chase down and believe every story he's heard. So I am inclined to believe that this Willie person did tell Bruce a story about inventing the Big Muddy monster.
Oh, Willie, you rascal.
Whether he was fabricating or not is just something we'll most likely never know. And at the end of it, I think that could be a good thing. I think it's really cool and folklore and legends can just be born like this. Almost makes me yearn for a world.
Like mentioned earlier, Jester, someone got hit by a car doing a Bigfoot prank on the roadside.
Without the internet, where nothing could just be fact checked on the fly, and you just had to take people at their words when they say they saw something mysterious in the woods or the ocean or a ghost in their house, whatever it is. But I love that kind of local folklore that gets created. So what do y'all think? I want to hear your opinions in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to hear more stories about strange and mysterious things going on in our universe, please go ahead, hit that like button. Don't forget to share this with a friend and subscribe and ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all my latest broadcasts.
All right. And yeah, hit the notification. This has been the Groovy Red Planet. I don't know if he's still making content or not because his channel only has the 3 videos and they're all from a year ago. So I don't know. He only had 22 subscribers. He has 23 now because I subscribed. If you want to subscribe, you can go subscribe too. But as far as Cryptic Corner goes, let's look and see how that poll went. Is it Big Feet or Bigfoots? All right. So it looks like Bigfoots won the poll, getting 76% of the vote. 76% of the vote. 25 people voted on it, though. You all are very adamant that Bigfoots is the right answer. So, yeah, when it comes to the Big Muddy Monster, oh, almost forgot. Here, we gotta do the sound. So here's the sound of the Big Muddy Monster. Only known analog recording from June 26, 1973, Murfreesboro, Illinois, Big Muddy Monster evidence file. So that's that. Yeah. Almost forgot to show you all that. All right. So what do you guys think? Is the Big Muddy Monster real? Was it a prank? Was it somebody in a ghillie suit? Was it the Missouri monster traveling downriver? Is it a skunk ape? What do you all think? Let me know in the comments down below, and please remember to be kind. Take care, and we will see you next time. All right, live from the Hive, people. This is the time of the show where I say, don't go anywhere, because we got more show to come, and it's going to be about creatures trapped alive in stone, apparently. So you're not going to want to miss out on that. It's going to be awesome. Just hang in there. But I'm going to take an intermission and go to check and see how the repair's going in here and go potty. In the meantime, I will play you all a new video that I haven't played before. So you'll recognize maybe the song and some of the stuff, but I just finished editing this together. I haven't done a new one of these music videos in a long time, so appreciate you for sticking around and hanging out while this plays, and I'll be back with you momentarily with our Week in Weird. All right, hello, my beauties and bees. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We are getting a little weird on our Week in Weird. We have a phenomenon called entombed animals, and we're going to dive right in. I got a couple videos about it, so. Let's see what they have to offer. Oh, where you at? There we go. So this Week in Weird, we're talking about a phenomena where creatures are just found, alive and locked inside of stone. Usually like toads and frogs and lizards and stuff, but let's see what's going on.
Hello, my fellow weirdlings. It's Hello, my fellow weirdlings. It's Margot, and today I'm telling you about the phenomenon, or is it myth, of entombed animals. Animals that have been found alive, though encased in solid and often prehistoric materials, such as stone. If you're ready to try to solve a centuries-old mystery.
This is sort of like an out-of-place artifact situation, like we found this hammer buried in this coal seam or whatever, things like that. But with like animals, but not just with animals, but with living animals. They're finding living animals. Let's go.
Keep watching. Though it sounds scientifically impossible, there are many historical reports of frogs, toads, and other small animals being found alive, though encased in solid stone, wood, or other solidified materials. These conundrums of nature are known as entombed animals. More than 210 such reports have been recorded over the last few centuries from all over the world. These are just a few of the dozens of accounts I've been able to find. In 1761, the chief physician to Henry III of France, Ambroise Père, related the following account to the Annual Register.
I would have called him Ambrose. So, yeah, I would have called him Ambrose Père. But I'm a Missouri girl.
Being at my seat near the village of Moudon.
They call, in Missouri, they call Cuvier, the naturalist, because there's a river named after him there that runs through Missouri, but they call it the Quiver River. Quiver. because of the way it's spelled. They can't say no Cuvier. It's Quiver River.
And overlooking a quarryman whom I had sent to break some very large and hard stones, in the middle of one we found a huge toad, full of life and without any visible aperture by which it could get there. The laborer told me it was not the first time he had met with a toad and the like creatures within huge blocks of stone. In 1865, the Hartlepool Free Press in Hartlepool, England, reported that excavators working on a block of limestone, taken from about 25 feet underground, discovered a live toad in a small cavity within the stone, stating the following. The cavity was no larger than its body and presented the appearance of being...
When these people like make these claims, where do they think toads live? They live like in rock crevices, in like burrows and under roots and under boulders. That's where they thrive. It's where their food is.
Being a cast of it. The toad's eyes shone with unusual brilliancy, and it was full of vivacity on its liberation. It appeared, when first discovered, desirous to perform the process of respiration, but evidently experienced some difficulty, and the only sign of success consisted of a barking noise, which it continues to make invariably at present on being touched. The toad is in the possession of Mr. S. Horner, the president of the Natural History Society, and continues in as lively a state as when found. On a minute examination of its mouth is found to be completely closed, and the barking noise it makes proceeds from its nostrils. The claws of its forefeet are turned inwards, and its hind ones are of an extraordinary length, and unlike the present English toad. The toad, when first released, was of a pale color and not readily distinguished from the stone, but shortly after its color grew.
I don't disagree that toads can get trapped in these places and have physiological growth responses to being trapped there, right? Let's see. Some species also hibernate in mud to pass the dry season, right? And toads are burrowers. Yeah, and like, or that the entrance was on the opposite side. You know, that the toad got there from the other side. Her intonation is annoying. I think some people find my intonation annoying too, though, so I'm not going to judge.
Darker until it became a fine olive brown. After having written previous articles on entombed animals, a Scientific American article from 1890 stated, many well-authenticated stories of the finding of live toads and frogs in solid rock are on record. A few years later, Nature magazine's editor argued, it matters little to tell the reporters of such occurrences that the thing is absolutely impossible, and that our believing it would involve the conclusion that the whole science of geology, not to speak of biology also, is a mass of nonsense.
Massive nonsense.
There have also been quite a few accounts of live toads being found inside the seemingly solid trunks of trees, with no observable...
Seemingly solid. And trunks of trees are notoriously riddled with labyrinths of little passages that only small critters like toads and insects and stuff can get through.
...way of getting themselves in or out. In 1719, the French Academy of Sciences published an account of the felling of a large elm tree. In the center
Thank you, PC.
of the trunk, about 4 feet above the root, was found a live toad, middle-sized but lean and filling up the whole vacant space. In 1876, South Africa's Edenhogue Times printed the experience of lumberjacks who were chopping a tree.
This little froggy guy is a cutie pie. Boop. And a boop. Sorry, Helen, if you're watching. I love frogs. I love frogs. I love them.
When a hole was found deep inside of it, containing 68 small toads, each about the size of a grape. The article said, they were of a light brown color, almost yellow color, and perfectly healthy, hopping about in a way as if nothing had happened. All about them was a solid yellow wood, with nothing to indicate how they could have got there, how long had they been there, or how they could have lived without food, drink, or air.
Well, trees are porous, and actually water flows through them. Trees grow, so It could have grown shut while the toad was hibernating inside. Just some thoughts.
Entombed animals have also been discovered within man-made solid formations.
And if you want to help a girl out right now, the best way to do it is that link that PC just dropped there, that buy me coffee for buy me bugs, where you can participate in the community by helping support what we're doing here, so that we can continue to shed light on some of this different fun stuff and keep your Saturday mornings lively. You're not obligated to, of course, donate anything, but you can donate as little as like $5. And every little bit helps me out. If you want to join the Hive, of course, there's the options down there. YouTube does take their cut of that, but if you want to be able to see it and get stuff on the screen here, you can definitely do that. There is also my Patreon, which if you want to get it on a tier level there, jump on over and we will get you all the sweet rewards of being a patron.
In 1976, a construction crew in Texas was breaking up concrete they'd set over a year earlier.
I need to be better at promoting my stuff, because
the crew found a live green turtle within the concrete in an air pocket that perfectly matched the shape of the small reptile. If it had got in there when the concrete was poured a year earlier, how did it manage to survive during that time? There were no signs of air holes or cracks in the concrete. When a castle
porosity doesn't have to be visible, as long as there's something allowing for the transfer of air and respiration. And turtles are kind of famous for being able to overwinter underwater, breathing through their butts. It's there's a whole thing about that. Amphibians are like that too. They can when it comes to respiration, they don't need the oxygen like we do, right? They go into this torpor, and they can stay that way for years sometimes. So just food for thought.
Wall was being demolished in September of 1770. A live toad was pulled from the solid plaster, which had stood undisturbed for more than 40 years. German collector Count Furstenberg was said to have proudly displayed a rock with a croaking frog inside in 1664. In nearly every known instance of the discovery of entombed animals, the discoverers state that
a croaking frog inside. That's interesting.
That there was no discernible way for them to have gotten in there, and the pockets are always about the exact size of the animals trapped within, often even bearing the impression of the animal, as if the rock or solid mass had been cast around it. Once released, most of the
cloacal respiration. Yes, exactly. I am not capable of cloacal respiration, though. Good morning, John Fabiano.
Animals have died almost immediately. So this raises a lot of questions, not the least of which is, what are these animals eating, drinking, and breathing to stay alive? Being unable to move in their tight encasements, how are their muscles developing strongly enough to often be able to hop away upon being freed?
Because they've been in a dormant state. They haven't had oxygen going towards these parts of their body.
And when found trapped inside a rock that's thousands of years old, how old are these animals? While you're thinking about that, let me tell you about this one.
This one's my favorite.
Hands down, the most unbelievable story of an entombed animal took place in France in 1856. A crew working in a railway line tunnel were cutting through Jurassic limestone when a large creature stumbled out from inside of it. It fluttered its wings, made a croaking noise, and dropped dead. According to the workers, the creature had a 10-foot wingspan, 4 legs joined by a membrane, black leathery skin, talons for feet, and a toothed mouth. A local student of paleontology identified...
And when it croaked, it was saying, hey, what year is it? Is it Tuesday?
...the animal as a pterodactyl. Over the centuries, some scientists and scholars have taken a crack at understanding or debunking the entombed animal phenomenon, using the contemporary resources available to them. In the case of the 1733 Swedish discovery by two Nybro quarry workers of a live frog sitting in the middle of a large block of 419-million-year-old sandstone the men were splitting, the frog was described
Sandstone is also famously porous.
as a gray in color, and its mouth covered by
Silica's like that. Silica doesn't, I mean, it's all edges and they don't always line up. There's going to be pockets.
a yellow membrane. The animal barely reacted to touch. A quarry inspector lost his patience and beat the creature to death with
In a yellow membrane. That does remind me of the sacks that that amphibians put around themselves during the dry seasons. They'll wrap themselves in a sack of dried it's saliva, but with water from the water around it, and that's how they'll survive through the season. But why would you beat it to death? Lost his patience and beat the creature
the
to
shovel.
death.
He later regretted his action, quote, for being the slayer of that extraordinary animal, which might have lived for hundreds of years within its stony prison. So he recovered the body and contacted various
For real, douchebag, don't do that.
scholars. Physician and self-declared naturalist Dr. Johann Phil became interested in the case. He argued that a frog spawn had somehow entered the rock and had developed over the following years into a fully grown frog. His paper, presented to the Swedish Academy of Sciences, was rejected in 1741. Known as the Frog of Nybro, the specimen was reportedly treasured in the natural history collection of Carl Gustav Tessin at Akiro
Carl Gustav Tessin?
Castle, but was lost after 1760. Around this time, famous Swedish naturalist and father of modern taxonomy Carl Linnaeus considered it possible that amphibians could live for centuries trapped inside of rocks. According to the Michigan Argus of December 1st, 1871, one man was so curious about these stories he tried his own experiment to see if such things were possible. M. Harrison, a French savant, enclosed 3 live toads in separate cases of plaster in February of 1771. In April of 1784, Harrison opened the cases, which were still whole, and found 2 of the toads still alive, though the third was considered a martyr to science. The animals were given
Well, I mean, they're all martyrs to science. You still took away their lives.
to the Academy of Science, and a careful examination showed that the animals had no communication with the external air, and must have existed without the least
How do they decide that in the 17th century or 18th? Was it 17th or 18th century? Regardless, either time period. How did they figure that out?
nourishment? In 1818, mineralogist E.D. Clark reported the discovery of 3 living specimens of a salamander species that had been believed to have been extinct since the Cretaceous period. At the time, this seemed to support the idea that animals could be trapped inside of rocks indefinitely. During the Victorian era,
I'd like to know more about that story.
entombed animals were known as the toad-in-the-hole phenomenon, and its mystique gained a lot of popularity. Common hypotheses at the time included that these creatures were the work of the devil, spontaneous generation, animals entrapped during
The work of the devil. I like that. Can it all be just the work of the devil? Spontaneous generation is that was the theory that maggots and mice and stuff just spontaneously generated out of meat.
biblical flood, or a young animal that had grown too large to leave its prison. Professor William Buckland, who was notorious at the time for his interest in strange geologic phenomena, decided to try his own experiment. He sealed 24 toads in niches carved into a block of limestone and a block of sandstone, and buried them for 1 year. In December 1826, the 2 blocks were recovered and examined. All the toads in the sandstone block were dead and decayed. However, in the porous limestone, some toads were still alive, and 2 of them had even gained weight. Upon examination, though, Buckland noted that some of the seals were damaged. In a second experiment,
Yeah, which means nutrients were able to get in, and maybe even insects to feed the toads.
with intact seals, no animal survived. Consequently, the toad in the hole seemed to be a biological impossibility. Yet in 1862, physician and author Frank Buckland, the son of...
I thought a toad in the hole was a fried egg in a place of toast. No, it's sausage. The egg is eggy in the basket. Yeah. Bird in a nest is, yeah. The toad in the hole is like it's a European dish.
William Buckland, and paleontologist/monster hunter Richard Owen had to protest against the public display of a frog in a coal block from a Welsh mine. Buckland studied the living animal and concluded that if the story was real, it was more plausible that the animal had entered the mine and become entrapped in coal during recent mining operations. Despite this, the frog was not removed from public display, but the letter of protest did prompt an intense debate in various newspapers about the veracity of such findings. From this point on, stories of entombed animals seem to get even stranger.
What does this picture have to do with what we talked about so far? No one's talked about an endothermic animal like a rodent surviving trapped in stone. Although, of all the animals that could survive a long time in case like that, rodents are probably going to be one of the better ones.
And more improbable, from the discovery of a living mouse.
Yes, Spooky, thank you. Toad in the hole is a sausage poked into mashed potatoes in the UK, at least. Yes.
Side of a rock to the aforementioned pterodactyl. The last famous toad-in-the-hole specimen was reported from Texas in 1928. Here, a horned toad nicknamed Old Rip.
All right, we're going to switch venues for this story. So we're going to switch over to...
This video is supported by Brilliant.
Hey there, kiddos. Gather around and let me tell you the story of Old Rip. Old Rip was a horny toad, or as my lawyers have informed me to call it, a horned frog. Horned frogs are these flat little lizards you find around here. In all these parts, they got spikes all over them and horns on their heads. They're ornery as all get out, but they're cute. Kids love to catch them and try to keep them as pets. Hell, Texans love them so much, we named them the state lizard. Well, in 1897...
They are absolutely freaking adorable.
Eastland, Texas.
Not even going to lie. Horned lizards are cuties.
Texas, they was building them a new courthouse, and they thought it might be a good idea to put a time capsule in the wall so that people from the future could learn something about it. So a feller named Ernest Wood gathered us some documents and a newspaper and a Bible, and last but not least, a live horned frog. And he sealed that up in a time capsule, and they put that... Wait, hold on a second, wait. A live horned frog? They put a live animal...
That's messed up, right?
...in a time capsule. What the frog? So, yeah, they sealed a live horny toad in a time capsule and they bricked it into the keystone of this courthouse. And I don't know how long they were supposed to leave it there, what time they were supposed to open it up, but about 30 years later, they were doing some construction on the courthouse. They were putting an addition on there, and yeah, they had to take the time capsule out. So they opened the box, and what they found inside was, some documents and a newspaper and a Bible, and, of course, a dead horned frog. Or so they thought. Yeah, in a matter of seconds, after opening the box, the
preserved a Bible, yeah, because they were thinking like maybe people would forget about Jesus in 30 years.
Horned frog's legs started to kick, and it just woke up and went about trying to find some ants to eat. This horned frog was named Old Rip after Rip Van Winkle, and it immediately became famous. It was adopted as a town hero. It actually went through a legal custody dispute for a while. It actually got to meet President Coolidge. And then after all the hubbub, Old Rip lived for another year before he passed away. And yeah, they put him on display at the Eastland Courthouse. You can go there right now and see it yourself. So growing up here...
Wow, it's still there. Interesting.
In Texas, I knew all about Old Rip. I actually have some family that live out near Eastland. It's definitely a big part of like local Texas lore and everything. But I was always fascinated with it growing up. The idea that,
the empty tomb. Old Rip rose after 30 years. That's what that outdoes Jesus by like orders of magnitude.
A frog could just sleep for 30 years. As I got older, I became more skeptical. Obviously, I've become more skeptical about most things, but as it turns out, Old Rip is not alone. There's actually a lot of stories out there about...
Are you talking about Michigan J. Frog, Dr. Osiris? Because that's what we're going to get into.
Frogs and lizards that have been found in rocks. It's happened so much that the phenomenon actually has a name. entombed animals. So have you ever been up late at night and some random memory from your childhood popped into your brain, and then you got on the internet and started searching around and you just fall down a rabbit hole of crazy?
Almost every freaking night, dude. I hear ya.
That's how this video got started. No, I was procrastinating getting some work done one day, and yeah, the memory of old Rip popped in my head, and I was like, what was that all about? So I get on the internet, and I start looking around, and I just find story after story after story after story that are just like this. And here we are. And yeah, I know you're skeptical about this. I know it already, but let me just go down the list here. In 1719, the French Academy of Sciences had a report of a thick tree that when felled contained a, quote, a live toad, middle-sized but lean and filling up the entire vacant space. In 1733, in Wanlingabo, Sweden, 2 quarry workers...
These are going to be like a rehash of some of the ones we just learned about, but bear with me.
...reported that they split a block of sandstone, and inside the boulder, they found a frog covered with a yellow membrane. The rock was from the Silurian Hamra Formation and believed to be 410 million years old. In 1770...
Which would be way older than frogs, or toads. There were no amphibians back then. 410 million years ago. No amphibians. There would have been amphibians, but not frogs.
A live toad was found in the wall of a castle that was being demolished. In 1818, a mineralogist named E.D. Clark claimed that he found 3 salamanders in an old rock. In 1821...
That's the one who said that they were like an extinct species of salamander, but give us no more details about it.
Stonemason named David Vircher claimed to find a lizard in a solid block of limestone, and that it took some time to revive, but it eventually did come back to life. In 1825, a professor named William Buckland decided to actually test this phenomenon, so he sealed up 24 toads in a block of limestone and 24 in sandstone and buried them for a year.
Yeah, we
Frog genocide for science. So yeah, when he dug them up, he found that some of them had survived, but he had also found some cracks in the...
Which ants and stuff can get through to nourish the amphibians.
Blocks that, something might have gotten in there, air, water, maybe. Anyway, he sealed them all up and they all died. In 1856, 2 London rail workers were digging a new tunnel and claimed that they
my favorite story.
Found a boulder and opened it up, and a pterodactyl flew out, but immediately died.
But they didn't say it flew out. I think it stumbled out and screeched and then fell over dead.
And turned to dust. That one may have been a lie. In the early 1900s in Devonshire, England, a gas fitter named Eric G. Mackley claimed to find 23 frogs.
Yeah, John Hudson, this is, a lot of these are just like silliness. Are you gonna go kick rocks? If you crack one open and there's a frog or something inside of it, come back, okay?
Encased in the concrete walls of a home, saying, quote, the meter houses were brick-walled but rather massively concrete-floored, and the concrete had to be broken up to allow me to get to the pipes for the extension. My mate was at work with a sledgehammer when he dropped it and suddenly said, that looks like a frog's leg. We both bent down and there was the frog. The sledge was set aside and I cut the rest of the block carefully. We released 23...
Yes, frogs can can burrow under foundations. It's true. They can.
Perfectly formed but minute frogs which all hopped away into the flower garden. In 1943, a British soldier stationed in Algeria was quarrying stone for a road construction, and he found both a toad and a lizard living inside a rock that had been dug out from 20 feet below the ground. Even Benjamin Franklin claimed to have studied a pair of frogs that had been cut out of a limestone boulder in Paris in 1782. Now, let's get real for a second. Yes, a lot of these could have been mistaken. It's very possible that there was a crevice in the rock or the boulder that
It's highly likely that there was a crevice.
The frog or the lizard had gotten into, and then when it cracked open, it looked like...
Especially when, found in a castle wall, or found in a foundation of a building, like not natural stuff. That especially is like, yeah... There's probably access some way in there.
They were in the middle of the thing. That's possible. And it's also possible they were just, around the rocks and trees, and then when they split open, it just kind of looked like they were in there. And this does kind of have the makings of a fad. It seemed to be something that was reported a lot back then. Fads are nothing new. We didn't create those. And like the pterodactyl story, some of them were probably just made up. But maybe some of them were true. I mean, after all, the animal kingdom has adopted some amazing survival abilities over the years. So for example...
I don't think that was real, though, that you just showed there. I don't think chameleons change color quite that fast.
Well, one way to survive your environment is just to get out of that environment by hibernating. So we're all familiar with the idea of hibernation. You're probably thinking of bears that stuff themselves in the fall and then find a cave in the winter and just sleep it off the whole thing. But of course, it's more complicated than that.
Well,
see, hibernation
don't really
is a
hibernate, they torpor, but okay, go off.
Term for an animal that lives off of its fat stores throughout the winter, the bear thing, for example. But there's another form of hibernation that's more...
Remember, that's literally the story to both the Blob, the Thing, and Creepshow's Ballad of Geordie Verrill. All feature that as an important element of the story plot.
Specific to animals in dry environments called estivation. And this is where they actually slow their metabolic rate down to near death in order to survive. This is kind of nuts, actually, because it's like a gray area between life and death.
That's how a lot of tortoises, that's why people, they liked tortoises, giant tortoises on ships as food, because they could go into this state and stay there for months in the belly of the ship.
Metabolism slows down so much that it's technically not alive, but it's not quite dead either. It's like, nature hits the pause button on it. One animal that's the champion of this is the wood frog. There's nothing that special about the wood frog for most of the year, but as winter starts to approach, it does something interesting. It stops peeing. Yeah, it just lets the pee build up inside of itself. And at the same time, the liver starts creating large amounts of glycogen, which gets converted into glucose. And so the pee and the glucose gets mixed up in its blood and creates sort of an antifreeze. And this makes it so that the frog can have 65%.
What if I had antifreeze in my blood?
Of its body freeze completely solid and survive. It doesn't breathe. It has zero synaptic brain activity. It's in a state known as cryptobiosis. And then in the spring, it thaws out, starts hopping around just like nothing ever happened. Now, theoretically, if it stayed in that unthawed state, it could probably stay that way for years. Decades even? And by the way, it's not just lizards and cold-blooded creatures. The Arctic ground squirrel can actually lower its body temperature to -3 degrees Celsius. And it can stay in that state for up to 8 months of the year. It slows its heart rate down to just like a couple beats a minute. It's one of the most extreme
But rodents have very short lifespans.
Hibernators in the world. I mean, even humans can survive freezing to a surprising level. In 2015, a kid named John Smith, apparently that's his actual name, survived being underwater and frozen for 15 minutes, and his breathing had stopped for over an hour before they finally brought him back to life, and he survived just fine. And
Did he have brain damage, though? That seems like a situation where brain damage is almost inevitable. Inevitable.
There are other animals that have developed protections against the cold, like Greenland shark and the Antarctic toothfish that both have antifreeze in their blood in the form of ammonia and glycoproteins. Crocodiles have protection against both the heat and the cold. If it gets too hot, they can go into an estivation state where they can go 3 to 4 years without food. And if it gets too cold, they can do a wood frog thing and just allow themselves to freeze with their snouts above the frozen water. So they can...
Well, that's alligators. Crocodiles can't handle that. Alligators can. But crocodiles are more athletic than alligators too, so that's kind of a trade-off.
Breathe. And then
a metabolic trade-off.
There's the lungfish, which, as the name implies, has evolved lungs so they can breathe outside the water. They can ride out droughts by burrowing into the ground and making a little nest there. It coats itself in mucus that kind of dries into a leathery
amphibians can do that too.
Bag of sorts, and then just waits it out. Its bodily functions come to a virtual standstill, and it feeds off of its own muscle, basically consuming itself in very slow motion. And it can do this for up to 5 years. And when the rains come back, they...
See, a lot of these toads, I'm wondering if what they found wasn't like a toad in one of these like Estes or whatever sacks, and then the soil around it had absorbed enough of the moisture to like form a crust or shell around the outside, so it was kind of like a rock with a toad in it, but it really wasn't.
Reanimate, go on with their lives like nothing ever happened. But of course, if you want to get into some real extremophiles, you got to go a lot smaller. And one of the most notable ones is one that was actually kind of a popular pet for a long time. Remember sea monkeys?
Sea monkeys.
Because I'm just ancient enough to remember it. Sea monkeys were a popular toy/educational tool that were around and sold through comic books in the 60s and 70s. And yeah, it was this toy where the kids would buy these kits and they would pour
we did a whole thing on sea monkeys about 2 years ago, I think.
Water into it and add these like magic crystals, and then boom, out of nowhere would be these little swimmy things. Of course, they were not monkeys of any kind. They were actually a type of brine fish that had been sort of genetically altered through selective breeding so that they could only survive in this particular solution that they sold along with it. The whole story's kind of crazy. But brine shrimp are crazy in and of themselves because they also have a very extreme form of cryptobiosis. Yeah, when they dry out, they enter this form of...
Here's my thing on sea monkeys. If you want to know about the history of sea monkeys.
Suspended animation and basically can stay that way indefinitely until they're rehydrated and then they reanimate again. And this is basically how they became a thing, their ability to kind of dry themselves out and survive that way long enough so that they could ship these sea monkey kits.
Love some sheep squatch there, John Hudson.
All around the world. And it was also kind of almost like a magic trick for kids. You know, you pour it in there and then just like watch these things come to life. But they're fascinating creatures and they're really tough. They actually did experiments on them in 2 Apollo missions. So brine shrimp are cool, but it's in the microscopic world where you find the real extreme survivors. Enter the...
Are we going to talk about water bears?
Permian bacteria. Now, we started this whole journey talking about things being found alive in rocks. This one takes the cake. The Permian bacteria were found in a cavern near Carlsbad, New Mexico, and they were found deposited on some salt crystals that were embedded in a rock. And now the reason why they're called the Permian bacteria is because that particular rock dated back to the Permian era. And if you don't have a geological calendar in front of you, the Permian era was 250 million years ago. And they came back to life. Now, it does need to be said that this is hotly disputed, just like some of those toad stories. Some people say it might be possible.
Sort of like the dire wolf situation. I'd like to know more about this, though. Permian bacterium. Okay.
Well, there was a tiny fissure in the rock that allowed that bacteria to get in there, so it's actually from a more modern origin, all that stuff. But there was a study in 2006 that analyzed the DNA and the fatty acids in this bacteria and determined that it is different enough from modern bacteria that it seems to be legit. Other studies have suggested that it's not different enough from modern bacteria to actually be that old, so the debate continues. Science gonna science. But last but not least, you can't talk about amazing animal survivors without talking about the Superman of the microbiological world, tardigrades. Yeah, some of you knew this was coming, I know. Yeah, there's a ton of videos that have been done on tardigrades. I'll link to some of them down in the description if you want to check them out, but let's just go down some of the crazier facts about tardigrades.
What if once you've reincarnated as all the other creatures, the tardigrade is your final form? I think that's pretty cool. I kind of want to be a tardigrade.
Shall we? They can live up to 10 years without food. They can remove all water from their bodies and survive. Their metabolism can drop to 0.01% of normal. They can survive the vacuum of space and the radiation of space. They can survive radiation in general by swapping out their water with sugar to prevent ionization. They can survive temperatures as high as 7 degrees Celsius, that's 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And when they enter cryptobiosis, they enter a state called a ton. And this makes them virtually indestructible. Pretty much if whatever is keeping them alive begins to cease, they have a way around it. Tardigrades are so hardy and impossible to kill that some people have actually speculated that they came here on a meteorite, that they're actually like an alien
I would have called them water pigs and not bears, though, just personally.
Species. Panspermia, if you will. Now that's not true. They have sequenced the genome of the tardigrade and have been able to determine that they are similar enough to animals from planet Earth.
They're very closely related to the velvet worms, which is kind of cool. And velvet worms do sort of look like giant tardigrades in a way. Let's see if I can find a video of a velvet worm. Here, I'll just pull up a picture because that'll keep me from getting in trouble. Because you run a lot of risk with showing animal videos of getting strikes. So I'm just gonna pull up pictures instead. Yeah, so this is a velvet worm. They're close related to tardigrades. They are derpy and adorable, like almost like a snail with legs, and they have slime cannons, so they can slime you. No, that's back to that one. We were in the middle of this.
Earth, that they didn't come from somewhere else, but they might be the first Earth creature to colonize other worlds. The Beresheet lander that crashed on the moon in 2017 had some sample tardigrades on it to do some experiments on the moon. So there are tardigrades on the moon right now, and they're probably doing fine. We do know that they can survive the vacuum and radiation of space because ESA did an experiment back in 2007 with some tardigrades where they were totally exposed to space.
I wouldn't be surprised at all about tardigrades popping out of a rock alive. It's the pterodactyls that I'm curious about.
And cosmic rays and everything, and yeah, it did nothing. If you've heard of the Breakthrough Starshot program, the idea of actually putting little tiny light sails that can ride a beam of laser light to a nearby star, there are plans and talks of actually putting tardigrades on one, just because, I guess. So yeah, frogs and rocks. Yay or nay? What do you think? Was old Rip just an old fraud? Now, I didn't mention this before, but when they actually found old Rip in the time capsule, it wasn't just...
Do you think that they should go rescue him, Sumami? Think we should have a moon mission to rescue the tardigrades? Hell yeah. Someone's gotta go check on him.
Some guy that got it out and went around telling everybody that he found this frog. It was actually part of a little event. They made a little event out of opening up this time capsule. So when they pulled this frog out, it came to life in front of many people. So on one hand, that kind of makes you think maybe it was real, but then you might also say, who knows, they could have switched it out beforehand and it was all just a big publicity stunt. And if that's the case, well, it worked. But still, it's a fun piece of Texas lore and, a good jumping off point to looking at the way nature has come up with survival abilities over the last billion years or so. And who knows, maybe there's something we can learn from these species that we can use in some medical advances.
So, I don't think that they actually can be considered living that long. A 5 billion year old tardigrade in a pterodactyl suit. To be picked up in the Mesozoic, I'm assuming. Going into that torpor state, though, I'm not objecting to the possibility that they could survive for decades like that, because they're not technically living in that state, right? And when they get an injection of oxygen or light or something that triggers their biological systems to reactivate, that will be when their lifespan starts again. So even like we talked about a horned lizard that lives, I think John Hudson said, about 10 years, and I'm gonna go with that. That sounds reasonable for a small lizard like that. But when it gets trapped like that, it may go into a torpor where its biological systems would shut down. So it's technically not alive at that point in time. So the 10-year lifespan is put on hold while it's in stasis. But hell yeah, if we could figure out a way to do that with humans, we'd be able to incorporate that into space travel.
Ways to boost our own survival, possibly. Because ultimately life is just a series of chemical reactions, and survival is just finding ways to keep those chemical reactions going. So if you'd like to learn more about chemical reactions and how they make life possible, you might want to check out the chemical reactions course on Brilliant. I don't know, that was a good segue. They don't have a course on rock toads. In this course...
Yeah, I kind of want to go into a torpor and see if I can wake up in a few decades down the road and see what the world's like, maybe. Can I do that? Can I crawl into a little burrow? Maybe in the wall behind the basement here or something?
You'll learn the fundamentals of chemistry by learning how reactions occur, and you'll do it through 15 interactive quizzes.
All right, this is just him plugging his stuff. But yeah, that channel was Joe Scott. He's got a big channel. It's 2.37 million. The past was insane. There's a little kid smoking a pipe in a mining uniform. Look at that. Anyway, so that's the channel I was looking at. We also looked at some different historical alleged creatures found trapped in stone. What do you guys think? Do you believe in this phenomenon? Do you think there's something more to it? Do you think that they're going into a torpor? Do you think that most of them are hoaxed? It's not like we can go into stasis. You can't go into stasis because you're a human, Sumami. Me, on the other hand, I am a giant intergalactic tardigrade in human form. Anyhow. What do you all think? Do you think this is possible for that to? I mean, I think to a certain extent, but like, yeah, pterosaurs coming out of rocks? No, I don't believe that. Not one bit. If they did, they need to preserve that shit because, yeah, you gotta show me. Show, don't tell. Anyway, yeah, so that's going to be our Weekend Weird. Thank you so much for sticking around, and hopefully you learned a little bit of science tonight. But until next time, remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you around. All right, live from the Hive audience, once again, as I always say at this time of the show, don't go, because there's more show to come, because we got to talk about these man-eating polar bears, which is a thing that happens, so don't leave. I'm going to have an intermission. Actually, we're going to advertise for Maya's show, and then we're going to have an intermission. And then I'll be back with polar bears, so stick around. Tired.
If it takes forever, I will wait for you for 1,000 summers. I will wait for you till you're back beside me, till I'm holding you, till I hear you sigh here in my arms. Anywhere you wander, anywhere you go, every day remember how I love you so. In your heart, believe what's in my heart. I know that forevermore I'll wait for you.
All right. Hello, my beauties and bees. Thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, we are here to talk Summer of the Man-Eater. There are a lot of man-eating creatures out there that will eat people if given the opportunity. And today, we're going to look at the biggest one that still walks the earth. The largest. So, we're going to utilize the channel Scary Bear Attacks, which I don't know if it's the same person or if it's the same channel that they just stopped doing. Excuse me. I just stopped doing the other animals, but there used to be Scary Animal Attacks. But Scary Bear Attacks is still going. They just released this 16 hours ago. And they have a lot of stories about a lot of bears. So you can check that out. I'm going to subscribe. It must be a different channel from scary animal attacks that he started just about the bear, just for the bear videos maybe. But I like his videos, even though he does kind of sound like praise that I am. He really does kind of sound like praise that I am, but yeah, I kind of deal with it because I like his content.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos.
See what I mean? He sounds like praise that I am.
Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Churchill, Manitoba, Canada. The tiny Arctic town hosts only 1,000 souls and was unknowingly built in the path of a polar bear migration route. Polar bears use the area to access and depart from the sea ice after each hunting season. Each June, the warming temperatures bring a thaw,
my flesh to nourish, you little ice puppy.
which leads to the melting of the sea ice. After spending the winter hunting seals and whales, successful polar bears are fat enough to enjoy their version of hibernation, which happens during the warmer summer months. During this time, fat polar bears will not go into actual hibernation, but will lay around and eat very little while being awake.
They go on like a veg situation where they kind of chill. They eat some stuff. That's when they'll eat the tiny bit of non-meat that's in their diet is when they'll consume that too, because they'd be all fat and bulky from. Praise sounds more annoying and sellish. Yeah, this is like Praise's cooler brother, Scary Animal Attacks.
Having no sea ice to get to seals and whales, they simply bide their time, waiting for the return of sea ice, surviving off of body fat reserves. Around November, the bears seem to sense the return of the sea ice and migrate once again past Churchill. As scientists and wildlife officers flood into town to count the bears, the giant white Bruins mill around and wait for the first deep freeze to set in. As soon as the sea ice appears on Hudson Bay, the polar bears flood out and disperse and leave Churchill safe once again.
You can see the time lapse, but every now and then he gets up and looks over and checks how the sea looks out there.
But what happens when the regular weather patterns vary and the sea ice doesn't return on time?
The eyes.
Well,
if not friend, then why friend shaped? Oh my gosh. I love you. Can I climb on your back and ride you?
That is what today's episode will discuss. By the year 1983, Canadian Wildlife Services had been observing polar bears in Churchill for 15 years. They sedated and tagged many of the bears to identify patterns in behavior, as well as recognize individuals as they interact with humans and bear communities. An estimated 1,800 polar bears had been visited, with 1,300 of them tagged, meaning only 500 remained to be tagged. The sows in this area had been very productive.
They need to stop. No, I'm going to have a hard time seeing the polar bears as the villains in this story. Look at their babies.
Yielding about 2 cubs each, which was the most productive polar bear breeding population in the world at the time. The previous winter of 1982 had posted record snowfall, which sounds like it would be good for polar bears, but can prevent them from accessing breathing holes easily, limiting hunting success. When the bears returned from the sea ice the following spring, they weren't as fat as they needed to be, and sea ice had broken up early, limiting their hunting season. Temperatures that summer...
That's in the 80s. Their hunting seasons are even shorter now. And some seaways that haven't been open in human history are now open in the Arctic, so...
were so warm that bears who were waiting for the return of the sea ice were under an added strain, pushing them to new heights of desperation by the time fall had returned. By the time November rolled around, there was an overabundance of thin polar bears.
Most polar bears in zoos are probably quite miserable unless it's like a inside enclosure that's kept cool. They're probably just too hot to. And also, if a bear that's habituated to humans in a zoo might any animal is habituated to people in the zoo. I mean, tigers see humans as prey too, and they aren't charging at the glass all the time because At some point, it's like, yeah, I can't get through here. I can't get to those humans, and they just gotta like ignore them.
Around Churchill, and the locals were worried. Hudson Bay froze over, but a brief warming trend melted the sea ice once again, before the bears could find enough seals and whales to fatten up. Observers along the coast were treated to a polar bear gallery of at least 50 different polar bears surrounding the town of Churchill. Now, something interesting that needs to be discussed is just how difficult it is to dispose of trash in permafrost. The Churchill dump was the lone receptacle for residential trash.
They still have this going on at Churchill dump. They take those big buses with the snow tires on them out there and take people on tours. They monetize their dump.
But wasn't secured from polar bears.
Yeah, it's big floppy feet.
At the time. Given the temperatures were low enough to preserve food dumped there, the scent drifting on the breezes proved a great temptation to the hungry polar bears. On Tuesday, November 29th, 1983, 46-year-old Thomas Muutinen had been out on the town visiting a few friends. Given the town was small, he preferred to walk everywhere, despite polar bear patrols having been established to ensure public safety from marauding bears. The polar bear
in spite of that instead of because there were polar bear patrols, he felt safe walking everywhere. Yeah.
Her emergency telephone number was busy recently, and public notices had been published discouraging residents from walking around at night. But Thomas likely decided he'd be okay in the short walk back to his home. Thomas had been facing some challenges lately and was without a job. The frustration and despair of his situation may have led him to be indifferent to the polar bear warnings. No matter what issue.
Yeah, I can vibe with that. I've been in a mental state where I was depressed enough that I'm like, you know what? Why shouldn't I use my body to nourish a great white shark? I need to go to the coast and just jump into the sea and let the shark take me. I get that. I get those vibes.
As he was dealing with, he left the gathering at
Depression sucks. And being unemployed sucks.
nighttime and walked through Churchill toward his home. As he navigated the familiar turns of the streets of the town, Thomas was unaware that a smallish polar bear had somehow eluded the polar bear watch officers. The bear was now wandering through the streets and eating from trash cans as the man and the bear's paths intersected each other. It isn't exactly clear how the polar bear began attacking Thomas, but local guide Mike Reimer recalled hearing shouts in the street near his location. Mike rushed toward the cries with his hunting rifle, convinced that a polar bear had penetrated the bear patrol. As Mike approached the attack site, he could see the massive bear standing.
Look at its face! Oh my god! It's going to tell us horrible things about polar bears, but I just want to look at its face and see how cute it is. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
Over a man who was stretched out on the ground. By now the bear had been tearing at Thomas for several minutes, without interruption, leaving him with gashes and bites from head to toe. Responders who were likely unarmed tried to lure the polar bear from atop the man by tempting it with trash and food items to no avail. Mike raised his rifle and fired several shots at the bear from close distance. More than one of his bullets struck the bear's vitals, but the hungry predator continued to attack Thomas. After a few seconds, the effects of the rounds began to take its toll on the bear.
And the bear didn't know, and it's like, oh, here's another thing to eat. I'm starving. I'm hungry. We eat this person.
The polar bear eventually succumbed to its wounds, allowing first responders to move in and retrieve Thomas, who was still clinging to life. With wounds described only as what you would expect from a bear, Thomas was rushed to the local clinic. While en route, Thomas passed away and could not be revived by medics tending to him. Following his uncle's attack, 19-year-old Keith Dick arrived at the attack site. His only reported observation of the scene was that Thomas's blood covered the area, indicating a prolonged struggle. The young and undersized polar bear had entered town led by hunger. What isn't clear is if Thomas had stumbled into the bear as it raided trash cans, prompting a defensive attack, or if the bear had stalked him in a predatory manner. Trash was
They look so wise, too. Look at their beady little eyes. They're pondering things. It's like, if I walk 30 miles to the west of here, I might find that shore where the dead whales wash up. He's wise and pondering.
located near the attack site, though cubs were not observed nearby. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, link below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes. The little polar bear attack was the first in 17 years in Churchill. Despite the polar bear patrol each night firing firecracker rounds to scare bears from the town, this bear still managed to infiltrate and kill Thomas. While many polar bears were tranquilized and relocated, all efforts to curtail polar bears converging on Churchill were met with limited success. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. In addition to the polar bear patrols, should the Canadian government have issued bear spray or firearms to city residents for self-defense? Should the Churchill city government organize a form of public transportation to keep residents
Maybe a curfew
out of the streets at nighttime? Why do you think the city didn't dispose of its trash by incinerator?
You're actually, if it's that's the old way. Now, if it's a black bear, you're supposed to challenge it to a dance-off. If it's a brown bear, you're actually supposed to try to seduce it. But if it's a polar bear, all you can do is try to boop its snoot before you die.
As opposed to leaving trash in the dump to tempt the polar bears on their migration. I'll gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching
Polar bear stories to cover here. This one's from 3 weeks ago.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos.
You never hear about scary twink or scary otter attacks.
Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
The wind bit at the young man's face as he stepped out into the open edge of Fort Churchill, the crunch of his boots breaking the crust of hard snow. He kept his parka hood tight against the Hudson Bay gusts, head down, thinking only of his errand.
Churchill once again.
And the warm light of the next building. A stray dog barked once in the distance, then went silent. Somewhere beyond the row of houses, a pale shape moved across the flats, blending with the drifts until it shifted, revealing the long neck and black nose.
I've defeated many black bears with just dance moves alone. Once you show that you got moves and you serve it up, that bear's going to be turning around.
Of a polar bear. The animal stopped, its head swinging toward the lone figure in the open. The man looked up, squinting into the glare, at the shape growing larger with unnerving speed. By the time he understood, the bear was already running, its huge paws silent over the snow. The young man turned and ran, the frozen air burning in his lungs, but the sound of the bear's charge closed in, heavy and fast. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Along the rocky shores of Hudson Bay, the town of Churchill sits at an important nexus. Near the town, vast subarctic forests give way to tundra, and land gives way to the bay, leading to the sea. For some reason, these geographic traits combine to be the annual jumping-off point for polar bears as they return to the sea ice for hunting season. They gather in the hundreds.
Furriness, Aunt Jer. The difference is furriness. Twinks are largely hairless, whereas otters are twink-sized but furry like a bear.
Hungered by summer, without much food, if any. If there's any variation in their normal migratory route, then the bears have to make do with whatever food they can find until the sea ice forms. The forests that surround Churchill consist of black spruce, tamarack, and quaking aspen, and many of these trees are the dwarf version due to the harsh climate. Along the ground, bushes like Labrador tea, dwarf birch, and willow burst with color and life in the short summer and fade to thin wisps in the fall. A similar existence is experienced by bushes like crowberry, cloudberry, and blueberry. There are berry bushes here, but polar bears are a unique bear species, and that they are the only true carnivorous bear in the family.
That's not how that works. They're the only true hyper-carnivorous obligate carnivore. There's a few different terms that you could have used other than just saying they're only carnivorous, because all bears are carnivorous, right? They're actually in the family Carnivora. Even pandas are carnivorous. They will eat meat when it's presented or when it's available, but they prefer their specialized diet.
Rolling tundra, herds of caribou and muskox can be seen, always busy, always on the move. The panel of predators here is limited to Arctic fox, wolves, and wolverines, as they are the hardiest of their species.
Limited to, that's plenty of predators. Wolves, wolverines, and Arctic foxes, and polar bears.
Not always a presence in the area, polar bears are the ghost-like predators, who are the most difficult to predict. In the bleak early winter of 1968, a 19-year-old Inuk tribe member named Palosi Miko had been attending trade school in Churchill. He was born in the First Nations village of Great Whale River in Ontario and was seeking career opportunities at the technical school. His family hunted and fished for a living, so the town was a reprieve in some ways compared to the village. Like many natives, he was known for his quiet determination and abilities to survive through trapping, ice fishing, and ice hunting. Now, something Miko likely wasn't aware of before reporting to school was that polar bears congregated around Churchill and fed from the town dump while they waited for the arrival of sea ice.
All animals are all... So it's kind of peculiar. Like, if you're going to go off dentition, you're going to go off diet... how are we going to decide what's an omnivore? Because most things will eat some level of vegetation and some level of animal protein when available. You know, I'm sure you've all seen the videos of the horse eating the duckling, or of the deer eating the snake. But you know, your cat will also, you know, eat some grass. Even though cats are hypercarnivorous, they will add a little bit of vegetation to their system just to get, you know, whatever kind of vitamins or whatever they need to keep their motors running. And obviously we all need minerals too. So it's all a gradient, you know. Depends on how you want to draw the line. Now, when it comes to carnivora is a scientific class of animals, right? It's everything. A cat and a dog are both carnivora, and everything in between: bears, seals, otters, weasels. Yeah, all of those animals are on the order Carnivora, and they're known for their carcinal teeth, which is a specialized tooth for that's used for crushing, and the shape and structure of their carcinal teeth are a defining characteristic of their ancestry. So, all bears are carnivores in the order Carnivora, but most bears will eat any form of sustenance. But yeah, you shouldn't be feeding your cat healthy vegan meals now. But the most carnivorous of bears is the polar bear. I think it makes the meat makes up like 98+% of their diet, and the most herbivorous bear is living. I should clarify, is the giant panda, which I believe that vegetation's almost completely bamboo makes up like 85% of their diet. So.
Bear spray was still decades in the making, and he wasn't carrying any kind of firearm or other protection with him. There was no way Miko could have known it, but his route on this day would take him to a crossroads with a dangerous and nearly invisible predator. A polar bear had wandered into town under the cover of twilight. It may have been drawn by the scent of the town dump, or perhaps the residents had carelessly disposed of their trash. Whatever led him there, Miko was oblivious to the approaching tragedy. Given the bear may have been following tantalizing scents for 20 miles, as soon as it...
So I checked, polar bear's diet can be as high as 70 to 85% fat and protein, and sometimes more than 79% meat. So that's a meaty diet. But yeah, there is room for veg there. And then we'll do what percent panda compared to a panda, where, yeah, oh goodness, their diet is only, it makes up 1% of their diet. Now there's your contrast.
It saw Miko. Its predative instincts kicked in. Miko was in the middle of a large open space between two buildings when the polar bear charged toward him. Knowing polar bears are the slowest bear species, Miko knew his only hope was to run from the bear and hope to reach a building before the bear attacked him. Why this bear chose Miko is a hard concept to pin down. There were other community members nearby, and they watched and yelled as the polar bear pursued Pelosi, but for some reason the bear never wavered from focusing on Miko.
I cannot help it. That little eyebrow is so cute. Look at that.
Stormed past other residents, likely frozen in fear, doggedly following the terrified man. In front of bystanders and onlookers, Miko was overtaken by the bear and dragged to the ground. Miko yelled in terror and kicked and punched, trying to fend the bear off, as residents and visitors were powerless to stop the bear. If they intervene, they may well become its victim, so their contributions were limited to yells and shouts. Repeated efforts to drive the bear off were unsuccessful, as Miko, who was...
What? And no one was armed? What about the polar bear patrols that we talked about in the last video? I feel really bad for this dude because he was just like he wasn't even doing, he was just like walking in town. He wasn't even like in the middle of nowhere. He was at school.
Clawed and bitten for 20 minutes before an intervention was successful. A local man went to his home to retrieve his hunting rifle and shot the bear as it stood atop Miko. After the mortally wounded polar bear fled from the attack site, townspeople rushed in to provide Miko care. The blood-stained snow highlighted the horror as the first responders witnessed Miko's throat gashed by the bear's claws.
Oh my gosh.
No matter what they tried, the wounds inflicted by the polar bear were fatal, and Pelosi Miko died. Miko's body was transported back to Great Whale River to be buried by his family, while both towns mourned the tragedy. As for the polar bear's motives, it was brought into town due to the fact it lay on the migratory route and offered attractants to the bear.
They are so fucking adorable. I cannot stand it. This doesn't look like this shouldn't even be a real animal. They're so cute. Oh my god. And then they kill people. Yeah, these adorable creatures kill people. I just my brain doesn't wrap around that. I would still go out like, I want to boop. I want to ride on this little back.
It seems like a case of predatory behavior, but it was unwittingly aggravated by the practices of the townspeople. It was not defending a cached animal carcass, nor was it defending cubs. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to this.
I got Patreon too.
Today, Manitoba is home to an estimated 900 polar bears, the majority of which migrate along the western shore of Hudson Bay. The province spans roughly 250,900 square miles, giving a density of about one bear for every 279 square miles today.
Maya, I am 42 years old. I'm a grown adult making adult decisions, so if I decide to boop the polar bear, you can rest assured that I've thought through the consequences of my action and I'm prepared to meet my demise in its jaws.
Bear.
But actually, that's bad for the polar bear too. That's the only thing that would stop me is that if it did happen to attack me, then people would kill it, and I don't want it to have to die because I was stupid enough to try to boop it for real. I would never do that to any wild animal, ever. Just because I respect and I love the animal too much. Even a shark, yeah, even jumping into the jaws of the great white shark, which is like the way I fantasize about going out at the end.
Attacks here are rare, but not unheard of.
It's forbidden. The goddess has forbidden it.
Churchill has recorded multiple fatal polar bear attacks in the last century, with this tragedy among them. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Would carrying a firearm or even a sturdy spear have given Pelosi a chance to fight against the charging bear? Could earlier, more organized polar bear patrols in Churchill have prevented the animal from wandering into town? Or, given the realities of life in the North, was this attack simply the tragic meeting of a hungry predator and a young...
I'm not sure why he didn't try a bicycle kick or a Hadouken. He didn't... anything like that.
man in the wrong place at the wrong time. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear.
Yeah, thank you, Scary Bear Attacks, for filling us in on the bears in Churchill, Alaska. Let's go up. We're in Illinois still. Let's go up to Churchill, which I believe it's right here, right? Yeah, here we go. And this is where the bears, where's the dump at? There's the airport. Polar Bear Alley. There we go. I wonder if we can drop down there. Yes. This is Polar Bear Alley in Churchill. We can drive down it. There's the coast, right? You don't want to get ate by no polar bear out here. Let's look at the town, though. Because it is a little tiny town, like for real. There's the airport. Most of the town is up here, though. I want to say this is where the attacks happened, but where's the school? Because he was at the tech school. I wouldn't think it'd be up there. But I don't know. Polar Bear Bed and Breakfast, the Beluga Beach House. That's top rated. Lazy Bear Expedition and Tours. Remote service area. Okay. Got some little lakes here. Where's the school? I have a baseball field too. Look at that. I guess this is the school. That's the elementary school. Is there Aurora Domes? Wonder what that is. It does look like a frozen wasteland, though, doesn't it? I guess that's the domes. Anyway. So the polar bears come in off the ice. Right through here. And I guess this Churchill River creates a landform. It's just right for them. What is Diggies? What are you, Diggies? Diggies disappears when you get close to it. Suspicious. And you can't even drop down, but it tells you it's there. Are you concerned like I am? Let's see. Tech school, maybe? That's really far away. That's way down in Winnipeg. Yeah. So I don't know what school he was going to. Anyway, so that's Breeze Bestiary. We visited the town of Churchill. and explored some of their history with polar bear attacks. I hope you found that as interesting as I do. Yeah, polar bears will always see humans as walking drumsticks. You're not wrong. If not friend, why friend-shaped? Exactly. I love floofy friends. All right. Thank you so much for sticking around, everybody who did. We're going to wrap things up with Live from the Hive. Let me clear my throat real quick. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. A frog in the hole. Yeah, or toad in the hole. Whatever, we talked about the animals trapped in stone earlier today. So irony. We had the big muddy monster, which was a good time. And now we wrap things up with the polar bear attacks. Stick around next week for, what are we covering next week? Oh, doing saltwater crocodiles. Hell yeah. I'm here for it. And then there'll be polls for you all to decide what we should look at on Cryptic Corner and on Week in Weird. So we'll see a return of Snake Charming, Tarantism, and Crystals, and we'll see Phantom Monks, Men in Black, and Ontario Panther. They will all be returning, and there'll be a new option on the list too. So make sure you get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. Nothing's stopping you. Nothing's keeping you from voting on what the best option is to cover that week. The only thing stopping you is your own misgivings. You can definitely do two things at once. I'm glad Kip Davis is here. Because we just talking about you last night. That you had written no books. What's that about? Have you considered maybe writing some books? All right, so I'm going to wrap the show here. I will be back next week, obviously, with more Live from the Hive. And yeah. All right, be kind, take care, and we'll see you next time.